Like most of us, because of the coronavirus outbreak, I'm stuck at home. As a 15-year-old, I wasn't quite expecting this to be my life as a teenager. Curious about what the world looks like amid the pandemic, I'm talking with people who are on the front lines, helping our society get through this difficult time. Sharing their stories gives me hope while I'm 15 and quarantined. As we all know, oil is a vital resource and its consumption has been heavily impacted by the pandemic. We saw this in the past months with record low gas prices. The Middle East is a leading producer of the world's oil. In this episode, let's get a better understanding on how essential workers in the oil industry have been affected by the pandemic.
My name is Ahmed Arif, and I am working in the Middle East and the oil and gas industry for one of the leading oil and gas companies slash providers out there. I am working as an engineer um, in the critical day-to-day operations. And thank you for having me over today and interviewing. And I'll be looking forward to answering any questions.
So, can you tell us a little bit about the oil industry?
Yeah, sure. So, um, oil and gas industry is one of the largest industries this world is exposed to. We have massive trades, we have massive agreements, we have massive values, lot of exchanges of cash. It's not $1 million, it's not $1 billion, it's $1 trillion, multi-trillion dollar industry. And this industry has its own pros and cons, its own contributions, and at the same time, its own impacts whenever we are going through a difficult situation, as such as the one that we're going through right now with the COVID-19 phase that we're going through right now. Yeah.
So, what stance does oil and gas have in the worldwide industry of commodities?
Mohammed Ali, that's actually a very, very good question. I'm going to tell you to zoom out a little and see the bigger picture. We have multiple industries out there actively that are always around us. We have um, industries such as transportation, which we call the automotive industry, the airline industry, tourism industry, the medical industry. And if you were to kind of zoom out and see all of these industries, they're always attached to a certain commodity. And if you were to ask me, we have some of these commodities are directly impacted with the ongoing situation of the COVID-19, and some of these commodities are not so much impacted. So let's break it up into two different phases, like the potential winners and the potential, impacted companies, calling the potential losers. And some of the losing industries that we have right now are the financial services, education, aviation, transportation, tourism. And then when you look on the other side, we have some other industries such as the medical profession. We have hospitals, we have companies that provide the medical staff and supplies, we have e-commerce, we have agriculture. These are some of the industries that have slightly been less impacted and kind of walking away as winners from this whole pandemic situation. And when you zoom in, you're going to see there's a common factor between the potential losers and the potential winners, and that exactly sharing element is your oil and gas. And oil and gas plays a very significant role because of the value it adds, because of the impact it has. It's always around us on a day-to-day basis. You drive your vehicles, you see trucks on the highways that are transporting, equipments back and forth. We have airlines which are using jet fuel to commute. This whole aspect of having refined products and other products such as crude, different types of crudes, has a very significant impact on our day-to-day lives, which sometimes we don't really realize until it's actually hitting us, which is the case like as is happening right now with the whole COVID-19 aspect.
So, like any other industry, supply and demand plays a big role. So, how does oil and gas contribute to this?
So this is a very good question. This is a very wide question. Supply and demand, it goes hand in hand. And just to give you a smaller example, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or a month and a half ago, you're probably going to be realizing that when you were filling up your gas in your significant area, it was a lot cheaper. Now in Atlanta, maybe the gas was close to like $2 or two and a
Yeah,
half dollars per
yeah.
gallon, roughly.
3 4 months ago it was like $2.89, and now you can get it for as cheap as 89 cents almost.
Yeah, exactly. Now this is exactly when your supply and demand falls into the picture. The more supply is in the market, the lower the demand goes.
I
You know,
do.
it's simple. So now what's happening is that multiple events that have actually been happening around us, pre-COVID and during COVID, there was a lot of underlining silent wars that were happening in the background. There were some misagreements between leading countries with Russia. There was a lot of OPEC members that were trying to, come to a stance and be like, okay, let's go ahead and reduce the production, the supply of the oil into the market so we can control this. And in like roughly about March, right before this whole pandemic thing went out of control, I mean, OPEC and some of his leading members decided to reduce by 1.9 to 2 million barrels a day, which was a significant amount when you think about the grand scheme of pictures. But when you zoom in, it was like it was a minimal impact. We still were flooding the market with a lot of oil, a lot of gas, and the demand kept on reducing because the supply was just all over the place. And then in about roughly April, late April and mid-May, they realized that, wait a minute, we as an OPEC and we as an industry of oil and gas is getting severely impacted. We need to do something about this. At that stage is when they decided to reduce the overall pumping of the crude inside the market from 1.9 million, which was the overall reduction, to maybe close to like 7 or 8 million. But at that point, it was a little too late to jump in the game and say, like, you know what, let me see what I can do to fix this. And in the midst of all of this, we were just severely getting impacted with COVID-19 cases around us, and industries going down, and the consumption of oil and gas being, constantly on a daily basis being reduced. Aviation, cars, trucks. So this was just like a chain reaction that was happening silently in the back. And I felt like the game changer events came in the picture, but they were slightly at a later stage, which was, it was too late to save the game. And obviously we're seeing this massive reduction of, this industry-wide reduction as far as projects and trades and manpower. And it's just a massive impact that is happening in oil and gas right now as we speak.
So how has the oil and gas market been impacted since its intervention with COVID-19? How can it be measured with some previous events?
Oh, absolutely. So again, this is a very, very good question. You can go almost 100 years back, and you can see the trend that this oil and gas has to offer. I mean, you can go as far as back as, I'll probably start off with the 70s. Roughly the late 70s to where we are right now. The oil and gas market has had its absolute lows to its absolute max points, back to a lower point. I mean, we have gone through significant storage capacity issues, which has driven the oil and gas price down. We have seen prices as low as $20 and back in the 70s to minus $37 as of the last 2 or 3 months because of some of the variations. Major factors such as the Gulf War that took place in the 90s. We have the Asian financial crisis that took place roughly in about the late 90s. We had the OPEC was cutting its targets down. We had the global financial crisis that roughly took place in about 2010. We're having the COVID-19 cases, which is happening in the late 2019, early to 2020s. All of these factors have driven the price from literally $20 to $25 all the way up to $140 and back to minus $37 and up to $40. You can just see the variation. This has never happened in the history of oil and gas, where the oil and gas price has gone below zero. People have lost millions because they were still trading and booking contracts during this time, not realizing that the oil and gas price has actually gone in negative. And multiple billions of dollars were impacted, and now the price is up to 40. But again, it's a lot lower than where it was exactly about a decade ago, 2011. The price was sitting at $140 a barrel. Now we're down to $40 a barrel. So this market overall has seen a really, really massive variation, causing all sorts of chaotic consequences.
So what are some of the key factors that are aggressively impacting the oil and gas prices during this COVID-19 phase?
Well, that's another interesting question, Muhammad Ali. We have multiple activities that are happening right now. Some of them are happening behind the closed doors, and some of them are happening globally, face to face. People like me and you are being exposed to this on a daily basis, and some of them are just behind the scenes. Some very small examples are the oil and gas price falling below zero. In I think roughly it was about mid April this year. That kind of variation caused all sorts of panic across this market. Um, with that being said, the oil and the supply and demand conversation that you and I were having earlier, we have a massive influx of crude being pumped into this market right now, which has caused the overall storage facilities to be maxed out. Almost 85 to 90% of the storage facilities are now full. So what do you do with all this extra oil that's coming out? So just to give you a little bit of a 101 on how this works is we have something called upstream where the oil is coming out of the ground. It's going up inside the well and it's going through a pipeline and is eventually coming inside a refinery. You cannot shut down the well. You cannot shut down the refinery. You cannot shut down the shipping of this product because what do you do with all your influx that is coming in, all this extra crude that is coming up the ground? You can slow it down, but you can't cap it. So this well is always active. You cannot shut this down because the consequences are even much more devastating. So you can slow down the oil coming out of the ground. You can slow down the process of the oil going into the refinery. Once the crude oil goes into the refinery, it goes through a, a small, very detailed, but at the same time a very aggressive distillation process where it goes through multiple different hydrocrackers and crude distillation units. And we have multiple other products. The crude eventually comes out and we get gasoline from crude. We get jet fuel, which are used in aviation. We come up with kerosene, we come up with diesel. All of these refined products are coming from crude. They're not just coming, by default. So whenever these products are coming out, we are constantly seeing a trend from upstream to downstream, and then eventually these products are being shipped out. So whenever these products need to be shipped out, there's a containment facility, and then the products are eventually being shipped out worldwide. I mean, you're going to, the U.S., North America, South America, and every single continent out there. So this entire life cycle is getting impacted because now the storage facility is now getting full. To answer your question, the storage facilities, which is the third phase, is slowly starting to get full. So what do you do with the phase before that, which is the refinery? Eventually, you're going to have to start slowing things down. So what happens to the phase before that is the wells where the oil is coming out. You're going to have to slowly start slowing the process over there because you're not really sure how much longer this thing is going to happen. So this oil and the supply and demand is really being thrown off because it can only slow down the process, but you can't really control the impact that it has on the economy. So this is another aspect. The storage facilities are almost 85 to 90% full right now, and this is another very, very big contributing factor. Then there's a lot of other underlying factors. There has been some conversations between Russia and some of the other leading companies in the world about cutting down the production, and those talks have not always been smooth, and this is why the conversation has taken a little bit longer. So in all, the OPEC, some of these leading other companies, storage of facility for the oil and gas storage facilities, prices going below zero, minus 37 for the very first time. A combination of all of these have really, really impacted and severely disturbed this whole oil and gas movement that is happening around, especially with the added stress of the COVID-19 right now.
So let's move to lockdown. How did the lockdown look in Saudi Arabia?
Okay, so the lockdown was very interesting. So we went from a our cases were gradually increasing in the Middle East. They went from 500 to 600 cases a day to almost about 3,000 to 4,000 cases a day. So the government started mandating small sections of mandatory curfews. We went at a curfew at 3 p.m. to try to control the exposed number. that wasn't really helping us out. So we increased the curfew from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. And the 8 p.m. was, going off for a couple of weeks. And again, the numbers kept on going up. So eventually they mandated a 24-hour complete lockdown for almost about 3 weeks to control the social distancing, the interaction of people, the work that has been happening, because some of these industries required a lot of manpower collaboration. So that aspect really kicked in, and the 24-hour lockdown started happening on a much aggressive phase. A lot of the employees were requested to work from home, not to report to the offices, and this helped us reduce our numbers from like a high 4,000 down to about 3,000. All in all, I mean, I feel like the country has done an excellent job. We are sitting at roughly about 160,000 cases in a span of 4 months, with about 110,000 recovered cases. So almost 70% of the impacted positive cases have successfully been recovered, and the mortality rate is very low. It's like almost like less than 1%. So we have been very lucky with these mandated curfews that are coming into the picture, that we were able to control the increase of the variation that this virus had to contribute.
So moving
Yeah.
forward, how is life there while the vaccine is still under development?
So that's a very interesting aspect, because unlike some of the other countries that are being exposed to this virus, the death rate is a lot higher when you compare America, when you compare Russia, when you compare China, Italy. I mean, obviously the population is a lot more. When you compare the Middle East to especially where I'm situated, we are 1/10 the population of USA. USA has a population of 350 million, roughly, plus or minus, and where I am located, we have a population of about 35 million. So we are literally, 10% of that. And with that being said, our our cases that are being discovered are very asymptomatic. Like, people are having very slight symptoms. Again, this is what's being reported: itchy throats, very light fever. But the recovery rate is almost 65 to 70%, successfully being recovered. So the vaccination being in the picture is obviously a concern, but I feel like this concern is more on a global scale versus a Middle East scale, because our mortality rate is still very controlled. So we feel like the vaccination needs to make its breakthrough. It needs to eventually be out there, but our symptoms are slightly more controlled, more asymptomatic, so we can kind of walk away being like, you know what, we should continue taking the precautions that we're taking and kind of hope for the best. And the sooner the vaccination comes out, I mean, it's a global fact that this virus is not going anywhere until the vaccination is coming out to its rescue. So until then, this has to be there. We can't treat this issue right now, but we can control this virus that is happening all around us. And I feel like the country is taking very extreme measures to control this from it getting out of control, from its absolute peak.
Mr. Arif, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.